You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinezic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinezic, and today we're buzzing into episode 174. Yeah, 174. And I couldn't be more excited.
No, I agree. You know, I was just thinking, I can't remember what episode it was, but it was last year during spring, and we did a buzz called We're Getting Cranky.
Yes,
because we're busy. And we've talked about, like, slow times during the nursery industry, and it's changing. We're so busy. Like in August leading up to September, but I'm not cranky about it. There's times where it's so extended you get cranky just because you're tired.
Oh, yeah.
We're busy and it's exciting, but at the same time it's hard to kind of get focused.
Oh, this is like very exciting busy.
Yeah,
in a way.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very exciting busy.
Yeah.
So,
but it's freaking hot, Fran. It is. We have the luxury of working in the office, and yesterday we spent, probably 9 hours in a car.
Have you ever seen me that sweaty? Like,
we were in a greenhouse at another nursery. Beautiful, like really big greenhouse. I would not want to see the bill for what that cost to put up. And I made the joke, looking at Fran and just seeing how sweaty it was. I'm like, Fran, if we were to put one of these up, I would ask them to include a squeegee for your head.
Yeah.
It looked like a little bit of rain fell on your windshield.
It looked like I had just gotten out of a pool or the ocean. It was... Like, I'm bald, so there's nothing to capture the sweat, and I didn't have a hat on, which I probably should have had a hat, but couldn't stop the sweat.
Yeah.
Like, I used the restroom in their like right outside of the kitchen of this nursery, and I could see a roll of paper towel in the kitchen, and I took it and just like trying to wipe my head off.
Yeah,
anyway.
But it was a really cool visit. Good to get some of our crew up and see some other places, which is always nice. And probably I guess that was somewhat plant related.
Yes,
we do like to get in the plant stuff as soon as possible, or at least warn you that we're not. So here's your warning. Fran and I need to talk about the pizza we had yesterday.
Oh my Lord,
that was really good, and we are jealous of the citizens of Connecticut for one thing. And
pizza.
And that was the New Haven pizza.
The New Haven pizza, and listen, I'm thrilled about, I could go on and name my top 10 New Jersey pizza places, my top 10 Philadelphia pizza places easily. And you can even break it down North Jersey, South Jersey. But the pizza that we had yesterday was true art.
Yeah,
I would say.
Personally, I don't think it's better. I think it's on a level playing field. I'm sure, I haven't had enough of I've had a lot of New York pizza, but I haven't had all of the staples.
Yeah,
I've had most of the New Haven staples now. I've had all the Trenton staple pizzas, and I kind of have them. They're all in that
even had some
elite echelon, and then can be a big drop to the next level.
Have you had Angelo's in Philly? I know you've had Pizzeria Badia, so you've had some of the top.
I went to Angelo's. We were going to go, I shouldn't say we were going to. We went. We were there.
Were they out?
They were on vacation.
Oh,
Didn't have it posted anywhere. So we actually went to a place, and I can't remember it, right down the street, which is one of the original Philadelphia tomato pie places.
Oh.
And
I know
which
Ralph's
is also really good.
Ralph's is close to there, which everyone talks about.
Ralph's Water Ice, right?
No,
that's Ralph's Water Ice is the chain.
Ralph's is an Italian restaurant. I think it's right near where you get the cannolis.
Iskra is amazing. Okay. If you're from Philadelphia area, that's another one that's worth the trip. Bring a ton of cash. Bring a ton of money with you, because they aren't cheap, but I think they're worth it.
I didn't think the prices were outrageous on what we had. So we went to Moderna Pizza, which I guess used to say Moderna Beats.
Yeah.
But which is Food and Wine just ranked it their number one in the country. And it's always hard when you're having good food and you want to compare it, but unless you're having them side by side, and they're different styles. Yeah. Like even Sally's and Modern's is a different style. Like Sally's reminds me more of Trenton tomato pie. But it was so, the cheese and the sauce was so delicious and everything was cooked so well that I don't even have words for it. It was
really good, yeah.
It was very, very good.
Yeah, but Yeah, I'll leave it. I won't make the joke that our coworker made about the people from Connecticut. I'm not going to even go there. Yeah. But let's get into the plants that everyone came here to listen about, are some of our favorite native plants of the week, and go into That's Hot.
It's funny you said, let's get into the plants, because my That's Hot is not a plant.
And I don't know why you did it this way when we have a section reserved for what you picked.
But
I know it's traditionally been my segment.
It's your segment.
It's everyone's segment to me.
And I know I could, but I didn't want to go into it that in depth because I wanted to use it as a primer for next week. Mm-hmm. So my That's Hot, I'm doing a little bit different. And I chose a book. And there's a reason why I chose that book. So the book is Soil, The Story of a Black Mother's Garden by Camille Dungy. And Camille is actually, we've already recorded an episode with Camille, and that will be our episode next week, episode 175. And after reading it, I was so moved by reading it, I really feel it's the one environmental book you need to read this year. And it's part of that is because it's in a voice that isn't often heard in environmental books. And it's the title says it all. It's the story of a black mother. It's a female voice of a mother, a black mother that it's not something you get when you're reading a lot of environmental books. And after reading it, I would put it on the same pedestal with Braiding Sweetgrass and Sand County Almanac. So I just want to give everyone the opportunity to read this book before Camille comes on. And I think you'll appreciate the episode more if you have a chance to read it. And it's a fantastic book. She has other fantastic books as well, but we talk a lot about this one. And spoiler alert, we are going to offer signed copies. Of this.
So you will want to listen to how you enter for a signed copy.
5-star review with something said. So anyone that's already given a 5-star review and had written,
you've already entered.
I'm already entered. Yeah. I want a signed copy, really.
Well, not you, but anyone who has written something.
You're already
in a 5-star review. You've already entered. You can. This is where the gamesmanship comes in. You could edit your review, and then you're going to pop back up to the top.
Yes.
I don't know if that's going to matter because I kind of just pick a random number and then I count back.
But it's more than one copy. I want to wait till we get the copies in hand to say how many copies that we have. Yeah. But it's multiple copies that we have to give away, and I'm really excited about being able to do that. So I listened to it on audiobook and then bought a copy myself. So the audiobook is actually longer. It's unabridged. So there's a little more content there, and there's singing, there's music. It's a little more interactive. So
and that's something we even talked about, how they're not own unique things, but they have their standalone separate experiences.
Because the book has photos that you can see. So it's the story of turning part of their property into a prairie. They call it the Prairie Project. And Camille actually shared with us photos of the prairie on their property, and that will be the cover art for next week. So it's I know it's a little bit different, but it is plant related. It's just not a plant itself. Mm-hmm. Take the time, get the book, read it. It will help along with that episode, and you won't regret it. So,
And I think that's a great choice, Fran. And it's something I'll be honest, definitely didn't read it. I hadn't read it when we did the interview. Yeah. I'd only heard Fran rave about it, and still haven't gotten a chance to read it, but it's something I want to read before this episode comes out, so I'm more well-versed for people who have questions and all that.
And if I did read a book, I would feel inclined to talk more about it, but I want everyone to experience for themselves and then listen along to some of the questions that we asked during the podcast. And I want to thank, is it Jennifer Cabrera? That recommended having Camille on, and it was a real game changer for me reading the book and getting to speak to Camille.
It was a real journey getting her on.
It really was.
But it happened, and I think we've made a friend.
I do too. And I think one of the things is, sometimes when you're trying to get a guest on, you have to go through all the right channels to get the guest on. And because that was getting delayed a little bit, Camille went out of her way because she wanted to do this to just make it happen. Yeah. She was just like, forget it. You're dealing with me now. let's make this happen. So we were really excited to have the opportunity.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
So
I'll let you go.
Before I get into my choice, I'm gonna fill everyone in. The place where we got the tomato pie was Sarcones. Probably pronounced Sarcones. It's basically Angelo's is on one corner of the block. That one's almost to the other corner of the block. Same street. Really good.
I will say this. I've had Angelo's multiple occasions. Not my favorite pizza. People I know that love it. It's their favorite pizza. It's too much crust and a little more doughy than I prefer. But I'm not saying it's a bad pizza. I'm just saying, am I putting it in my top 10? Probably not.
Where did the crust rank on it, the burnt scale? Because that's when you showed people in the office pictures of the pizza we had last night. Maybe the lighting's a little low. It made it look. It was a dark crust.
It was a dark crust.
They're like, oh, that's burnt. That looks terrible.
And the cheese is well done.
Yeah, which is how you should be eating.
Yeah, and I felt like when you have burnt crust, you taste burnt and it crumbles when you eat it. There was no crumble and very little burnt taste. Like it was dark, but it wasn't burnt in my opinion.
Yeah.
It was just well done, which was very good. Angelo's to me. The couple times I've had it, it wasn't well done. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's how it has to be, but it was a lot of crust to me and not as much sauce.
Yep.
And it's just, I don't know. Like Modern's, the flavor of the sauce and the flavor of the cheese was very impressive. And we had 3 different pies and each one was good on their own.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was very, very good. Yeah. Okay, back to plants.
Right. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
My plant, and I really don't have any write-up. It's a plant we've talked about so many times.
But I know why you're picking it, yeah.
And that is the pawpaw. And I've already raved about this plant and why you should be including it in your diet and in your landscape so many times. So I decided I'm going to do a little ASMR of live pawpaw eating.
Oh, really?
I picked one off my parents' tree.
All right, very nice.
Let's see.
All right,
I don't know if you can even hear any of this.
I can hear it.
That's me cutting into the pawpaw. I don't think this is going to be perfect.
Is it ripe enough? Like they tell you, like if you can squeeze it and
it's a little squishy, but it's not super squishy.
All right. So the pawpaw around here in New Jersey have been fruiting crazy heavy this year, and I did learn this that
I should have done that.
One pawpaw. Well, listen to that.
That's me opening the pawpaw.
The fruit of one pawpaw offers more calcium. I'm trying to remember the vitamins, but it offers more vitamins than that of an apple, than that of a banana, or that of an orange. It's like more vitamin C, more calcium, more of 2 other vitamins that you get in other fruit available. So
it's definitely not perfectly ripe. Okay. It's not like that super soft yet. Yeah. But I tend to like my fruit a little underripe. So good. I kind of like this.
And I tend to, like when I have
You want the other half, Fran?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Somehow I got to find a way to get it over to you.
Just throw it.
All right.
Good catch.
That was a great throw. You would be the person who compliments your catch. Oh, yeah, that was a good catch. It was right in the breadbasket.
It's a little underripe, but very good. Very good.
It doesn't have a distinctive sweetness that it has.
No, very good, though.
But, yeah.
Very good.
I couldn't wait.
I prefer having it a little chilled, like in the fridge or.
Well, I had this in the freezer for about 4 minutes before I pulled it out for this. I forgot to pick these earlier today, and wouldn't matter anyway because they're not perfectly ripe. But
this is so good. But the good thing about picking it a little prior to being perfectly ripe, once it's ripe, the shelf life is very short, and I think that's part of the reason you don't really see it commercially in a lot of supermarkets, because once it's ripe, I think you have like 4 days, 5 days.
And the other reason I wanted to do it while they're still a little underripe is now the people who listen to this on September 8th have a chance to prepare themselves. Hey, I've done this in the past where it's like September 22nd, and now you might be a little too late.
Yeah.
September 8th. You might have some time.
Yes.
Go out and find yourself some pawpaws. How far would you drive for a pawpaw, Fran?
Well, that's a good question. I would drive between an hour to 2 hours. Like if I could get a few,
I think
take
so
some
too.
home.
Yeah, I think it's probably. Well, I know people who've driven states away, like 8 hours away to get pawpaws.
Is this the time of the year where Ohio has the Pawpaw Festival?
I think it's next weekend.
Okay.
At one point in time, before I looked at how busy my calendar was, my brother's getting married in a couple weeks, so that's why I definitely couldn't do this. But at one point in time, I was planning a trip where I was going to go to the Ohio Pawpaw Festival and then go to the Midwest Wild Foods Festival.
Ooh, okay.
All in one trip. So I was going to drive out to Ohio and then drive up to Wisconsin and then come home and make some other stops along the way. And then I was like, well, my brother gets married on the 23rd and this all takes place like the weekend before.
Yeah.
I don't think I should be doing that. So we got a bunch going on.
And I actually had this conversation with a customer, and I was showing them some of the pawpaws on our trees in the landscape. And they were asking me about the native range. And they were in New Hampshire, and they're like, oh, like I have friends say, I'll just go out in the wild and look for them. But they don't occur naturally. That's a little further north. I think it's southern New York. I'm looking up on Bone Apps right now just to kind of confirm the
it's
range.
Now I'll give some tips on when you're found the pawpaw tree. How to pick the perfect pawpaw.
Oh,
I found if you're just looking at the tree, like if you're looking for apples and you're looking at the tree, it's really hard to find them because they're green and the leaves are green. They're hard to find unless they're like really sticking out.
Yeah.
You got to get close to the trunk, get like in the tree, and then look up and out. And you'll kind of see the silhouette of these pawpaws kind of hanging down from the branches. And usually there'll be like at least one, but sometimes there's two on a stem or even three kind of on like a cluster. And then you want to make sure the one I'm holding is primarily green, which means they probably need a little bit more time. You'll get some like blackish gray staining on them. That's a good sign. Big black spots can be a good sign. And then the big thing is, okay, you found the one, it looks promising, reach up, you grab it, you want a little squish.
Yeah.
If you're making bread, if people make bread, they have that test where if you poke it and you don't want the indent to stay, you want the indent to kind of like spring back. Not the case with pawpaws. You want that indent to stay with a pawpaw. Yeah. I guess with bread, if it springs back too fast, then it's not ready yet. You want it to like take like a couple seconds to come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, with pawpaws, you want it when you push it, you want that indent to like to stay there, not spring back. These ones are a little springy, but still tasty.
I was just looking, so it's inventive in New Jersey and New York, but southern Pennsylvania, it does go up kind of to Erie, Pennsylvania, but it's mostly southern Pennsylvania down to like the panhandle of Florida, out to eastern Texas, up to eastern Nebraska, and like north, kind of like into southern Michigan. Now, there are we're talking about Asimina triloba. There are other pawpaws, all of which are almost only like Georgia and Florida.
Yeah.
So, like Asimina reticulata, Asimina obovata, what's the other one? Spatulata. So, most of those are Florida, angustifolia, incana. Like, they're all in that same area. So, but if you can get a triloba and you can pick it naturally, it's, yeah.
This is what it sounds like to chew on a seed.
And the seeds are the size of a big button, like a coat button.
I like a lot of, I guess if you're eating sunflower seeds, I'll like tuck the shell to the side. Yeah. I kind of did that. I bit into it, I had a seed, I kind of like tucked it to the side, and then I forgot it was in there. Oh. But the other thing is,
this was a nice unexpected treat.
Yeah, the seeds will get. I have another one in the freezer for when we're done, unless we want to wait a little bit for it to ripen. But
maybe early next week.
Yeah, maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow.
The seeds will get like this. This is one of my favorite things about eating pawpaw. They get like that fleshy little thing around them. It did with this because it's underripe. Yeah. It didn't really stick to them. Yeah. But sometimes, and it's like it's unwrapping a little present in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It's like it is a very weird sensation, but the people who've had pawpaws are like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about. And anyone who hasn't had a pawpaw is like, what the heck is going on right now? This is different.
So it's a fantastic choice, and I got excited once I saw that this is what you chose because I've been I could see how heavy they were fruiting, and it was just like they hadn't been ripe enough. So I can even feel like, yeah. It's right. Like parts of I don't know how you feel. Like parts of it are ripe. Some of it's not quite ripe.
Yeah.
So, but good nonetheless. 2 great choices. So,
at least one of them was Fran.
How's
that
on.
for a comp?
Come on.
I'm
Come
teasing.
on. If you can get to a pawpaw, whether it be via store, if you're going to plant them, plant 2 because you won't get fruit if you only have 1. Make sure you plant 2. They're self-incompatible, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this is a business venture yet. Like overnight shipped foods has been like a big thing lately. Like you see, if a lot of people, I guess, it went into Instagram advertising hard, like Louisiana crawfish, and you I'm going to order it. You order it, and like you get it shipped up the next day. Like it comes the next day, and then you got to cook them right away. And thinking about it, there's some oyster companies I know in along the East Coast that'll do that now. Where it's you can even get the one is Barnegat Oyster Collective. I'm friends with some of the folks there, and they'll you get like a little cedar box, and it's filled with seaweed and oysters, and I think they put some other stuff in there too.
Oh, that's cool.
And lemons, and they basically just take the box and put it in a campfire, and it cooks. Like it cooks with the seaweed and all that. But it's the same. Like you go online, you order it, comes the next day. I wonder if anyone's done that with pawpaws.
I don't know. I will give a shout out to Project Pawpaw, which is a young company that's working to get farmers to do pawpaw as a commercial crop, like a fruit crop, and also working with supermarkets to make sure that once farmers have enough pawpaw to supply, that they have a place for these pawpaw to go. So we're hoping maybe 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you'll be able to walk into a supermarket in these areas and be able to find pawpaw as a viable fruit option. So, like I'm waiting for pawpaw. There's got to be a pawpaw ice cream.
If you go to the Bent Spoon in Princeton,
they have pawpaw.
They'll do a pawpaw ice cream from one of our friends' pawpaws.
Awesome, so. And we do know that Guinness does do a pawpaw ale.
The Guinness in
Baltimore.
In Baltimore,
and they weren't bottling it; it was only available on tap. So you just have to make sure you go at a certain time of the year and vote for it to make sure it makes it to that next step where you can buy it bottled.
Yeah, it looks like you can go online and buy some pawpaws. I don't know if anyone's doing that like overnight shipping, but 1 pound American pawpaw fresh to your door. So awesome. You got some options if you're out in the West Coast and you're not going to find these around you.
All right, awesome. So go get the book Soil by Camille Dungy and give that a read. And if you can get your hands on a pawpaw or plants to plant them, make sure you do that. So you won't be disappointed with the fruit. You'll find out why it was a chilled pawpaw was George Washington's favorite dessert. So what do you think? You want to do a little this or that?
Hit the jingle, Fran.
All right. So last buzz. Our articles, mine was on pet feces and the damage done.
And I love that one. I really did.
And yours was on in the invasive plants in Maui and how that factored into the wildfires. And everyone voted. And I came out. I didn't check today, but I was leading 15-7 last time I looked.
Yeah, I thought you had more votes than that.
Last time I looked was 15-7.
All right, I'll look.
Take a look real fast
for a second, but.
What
was
my
article about? Yeah, you said
invasive
it already.
plants. And honestly, I kind of felt that when I saw that was your article, I really felt that one would win. I was kind of shocked that mine got as many votes as it did. But it's something that we all deal with every day, and you don't think about some of the environmental impacts. I know we've talked about it with Canadian geese and the amount of nitrogen that gets put into the soil that way. But it was a very factual article that had some good information.
Mm. Fran, I'll update the score for you and say it was 18-7.
Oh, okay. Had a few more votes. So I'm gonna go. I liked your article so much that I'm going back to the well.
And Fran, I'm looking at who voted for what now, and I'm going to say that I probably, while you had more votes, I think the quality of my voters may have been better because I see we had both Alyssa Lewis and Brad Madrinsky voted for me.
Wow.
And then you only had Santino and Russ Finari. So
wow.
That might bring your total down. If
that
you
may
really
hurt
want those,
that comment may hurt your votes this week.
I'm only kidding.
So I'm going to go first. I'm going to choose to go first. And my article is called "Some Plants Are More Flammable Than Others: How Gardeners Can Reduce the Risk." And I thought it would be a good follow-up with yours. So this is by Jessica Damiano, and it was done through AP, but we found it on phys.org. And it's not a very long article, so I'm going to read the whole thing and move on. So the deadly wildfires in Hawaii this month were fueled in parts by plants, in particular invasive grasses that have taken over land once occupied by sugar and pineapple plantations. Some plants are more flammable than others, says Michelle Steinberg, Wildfire Division Director at the National Fire Protection Association. But there is no such thing as a fireproof plant, she says. All plants can ignite under the right conditions. Those conditions include improper pruning, insufficient watering, and poor sanitation practices that allow dry, dead plants to remain on the soil surface in high-risk areas. If you live in a fire risk zone or an area where climate change is increasing the fire risk and are selecting plants for your garden, knowing which ones offer some fire resistance and which are more flammable will serve you well. Plants that contain aromatic oils, resins, waxes, or gummy sap are among the quickest to ignite, even if they've been well watered and cared for. Those include acacia, bamboo, eucalyptus, Japanese honeysuckle, rosemary, Scotch broom, and gas plant, which gets its name from the flammable vapor its flowers and leaves exude. Trees with peeling, papery bark like river birch are generally more flammable than those without, and fine-needled evergreen shrubs and trees like cedar, cypress, fir, juniper, pine, and spruce contain volatile saps and resins. Their dropped needles, left to dry on the ground or on the roof, further increase the fire risk. Redwoods, a notable exception, are considered fire-resistant due to the tannic acids in their bark. I wonder if that would include, like Atlantic white cedar with its tannins, and that's mainly wetland plants anyway. But many grasses, such as the buffle, molasses, and guinea types that fueled the Hawaii fires, as well as fountain and feather grasses, are considered highly flammable. Their ignitability increases when they are left to stand dry over the winter or during periods of drought. Excessive dry heat evaporates moisture from the soil and from them and many other kinds of plants, essentially turning them into kindling. As a group, native plants aren't necessarily less flammable than introduced species, Steinberg said, but non-native invasive plants often pose higher fire risks because they spread readily, typically are left undisturbed by wildfire, outcompete native vegetation, and often tolerate heat, drought, and heavy rains well. They can quickly cover fields, acres, and even miles of land where a spark such as from lightning can set them all ablaze. Many grasses such as... I posted the same thing twice. I apologize. For the best fire resistance, select deciduous trees like ash, crabapple, dogwood, locust, maple, and oak over fine-needled evergreens. Succulents with water-filled leaves like ice plant and sedums are slow burners, as are some ground covers like ajuga and creeping phlox. The Washington State University Extension Service has published valuable guidelines identifying these general plant characteristics as fire-resistant. High moisture content in leaves, which ignite and burn more slowly, little or no seasonal accumulation of dead vegetation, open branching habits, they provide less fuel for fires, fewer total branches and leaves, again, less fuel for fires, slow growing, so less pruning is required to keep open structure as noted above, and non-resinous material on the plant, i.e. the stems, leaves, or needles that are not resinous, oil, or waxy. So I just thought it was good general tips. It does give a lot of great native suggestions to use if you're in a high fire area of what to use and what not to use. It just helps guide you if you're at risk of wildfires. Like that's something that we hear locally because of the Pine Barrens when you get fires, and we're far enough outside that I don't think we've ever had that risk. But if you're living in those areas, it's all things you have to consider. So I just thought it was a great primer of what to look for.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, we don't live in an area where this is as big of a concern, but just not too far away from us in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, like you said, is a place where it is a concern. Yeah, and we're and what's the word I'm looking for? There's so many. Yeah, there's so many of these wildfires going on. I mean, across the continent,
and a huge scope. The Canadian wildfires. We were under smog for like heavy smoke for 3 days, 4 days, like to where it was affecting
a few different times too.
Yeah.
Just when I was on Long Beach Island a couple weeks ago, I was standing on the beach and I read that there was going to be some smoke, and then you just kind of saw it roll in. It was really
it's wild,
interesting. So
yeah, it's wild.
It's something that can be so far away, has such a major impact, like 2,000 miles away. So
totally. All right, what do you got this week?
Yeah, I have a fun article.
Oh, can't wait to hear.
It's from a website called gardenrant.com.
Oh, and, I saw this and we've thought about it.
We've even talked about this a couple times. This website in particular, we've featured on here. And it's about something we talk about in our next episode
with Camille.
With Camille, and I left the author that they referenced, not in this article, but the article this author's talking about.
Yeah.
This is like a big wormhole. Kind of how we get in the podcast loops with the time warp. This is I'm talking about an article that's wrote about another article praising that author. When we're talking with Camille, I kind of say, he doesn't get it. Like he's saying I think his points are valid. They're just not
why don't you
in the right direction.
You tell the story of the introduction, how you left it for me and what. Yeah,
so basically what I did is there's a magazine we get called Greenhouse Grower, a trade magazine, and they'll have stuff like, why you should be using this fertilizer. Here's a cool plant you should look at. And there's a recurring feature, or a recurring, what do you call a segment in a magazine? Is it still a segment? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, there's a contributor who writes in this magazine every month. Yeah. And a lot of the time it is about native plants in some way. Saying, hey, here's some great native plants for pollinators, and lists. Usually a lot of cultivars. He's a traditional horticulture guy. Well, this one was saying how basically native plants are overhyped for pollinator benefit, and there's plenty of non-natives that are great for pollinators too. And I was just reading, I'm like, I have my feelings about this. I'm just going to leave. Fran wasn't sitting at his desk. I'm just going to leave this on Fran's desk and see what he thinks. And then he wrote back on a post-it note saying, this just makes him sound out of touch.
Yeah.
And which is kind of how I felt too. The original article was very much
it didn't give any scientific facts based on his opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give my opinion until after you read this article.
It was, and I agree, it was observational, and I think it was valid observations. But it was just like, it's not just about the bees and the butterflies that come to visit. It's the whole cycle, and not even just for pollinators, but then the whole food chain for birds. What's happening outside of your garden?
Yeah.
And why maybe you should think about, hey, what's happening over here, and why I should make a bigger stand here.
He's ignored
in my garden?
All environmental research that has been done over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I will give my rant afterwards, which isn't going to be popular with a lot of people in the horticultural industry. Maybe our listeners it will be popular, but I wouldn't be surprised if, again, you can add this to the list that if I don't show up for work one day.
Yeah. Anyway, the article was, again, from gardenrant.com, titled A Familiar Voice Speaks Out on Natives and Pollinators. It was by Elizabeth Licata, who's been a contributor for that source since 2007, I think. It's in her bio. Right. And I'll read the article because it was fairly short, and then her article, and then I'll give some more of my thoughts on it afterwards. So, well, look who's thrown his famous hat in the ring of often contentious discussion in pollinators and native plants. It's friend of the rant. His name's Alan Armitage.
Yeah,
and really, really respected. I
very have a lot well of respected in the industry.
The author of Herbaceous Perennial Plants, who has often contributed guest opinions here. Actually, it's been too long since we've hosted one. In a recent column for Greenhouse Grower, Armitage has a few blunt words to say, starting with, it does not take a brain surgeon and rocket scientist to understand the importance of pollinating insects to ecosystems in general, from the forest of the Amazon to your neighbor's vegetable garden. But then his wry addition, the fact that most gardeners and landscapers don't want plants to reseed and have no use for the fruit of Impatiens or Baptisia is not important. I won't quote the entire article. It's freely available and linked here. But basically, Armitage says that what many of us say, a judicious mix of natives and non-natives can make both pollinators and gardeners happy. He then goes on to applaud such non-natives as zinnias and salvia, both of which are the stars of my garden at this time of year. The article is also making the rounds on Facebook, where he's attracted plenty of comments, including these all good points. There's a lot of shaming going on in the garden community, condemning people who don't grow 100% natives. It's awful. I agree with Alan's line of thinking. As a lavender farmer who has a butterfly farm, I'm chastised by the native fanatics out there. Yes, I'm well aware lavender is not a native and zinnias are not either. Our butterflies and other pollinators love our selection of pollinator plants. As a professional gardener, there's no way I can plant all natives in my garden, yet there is no shortage of bees, butterflies, hummingbirds. I use a ton of annuals, and let's face it, the only way to satisfy many of my clients is with color year-round among the native and non-native perennials. The focus of pollinators, many of which are generalists, is short-sighted because it's not just about the pollinators. It's about the myriad of lepidoptera large. I think I might have missed something here. Where was it? Oh, I lost my place, Fran. Yeah. I'll read this anyway.
Okay.
It's not just about pollinators. It's about the myriad of lepidoptera larvae and other insects that need hosts, not just pollinators, plants, many of which are more likely to be specialists on one or very few native species. And here is another comment from a former writer of the magazine named Carol Reese. Plant closely related plants from other continents and watch the native insects use them for larval food. Nutritionally, they aren't very different. A place to start would be fennel and parsley for black swallowtail caterpillars, passiflora species that aren't native for Gulf fritillary caterpillars, Gomphocarpus, a milkweed plant from Africa for monarch caterpillars. Then help dispel the myth that it must be native. Tell folks to get out there or get out of the way and let the insects choose. Who are we to tell them what they should be consuming? And here's a claim about natives to which I thoroughly disagree. Bonus, they're adapted to local soils and climates, so it's easier to maintain, and they don't need to be replaced after 1 or 2 seasons. No, simply not true. And honestly, adapted to what soil? Local soil. In most urban and suburban communities, there's no such thing. Who knows what has been added and subtracted over centuries of human development? The primeval forest is long gone, my friends. I wish more gardens where I live would read what Armitage and our friend Carol have to say about this. Instead, too many around here have swallowed the orthodoxy whole, just the orthodoxy minus most science, and can't wait to scold those who dare plant buddleia or any another of the author's favorites, or even daylilies in their garden. While many would add more detailed analysis to such columns as Armitage, it's the accessibility of what he says that's important, and the common sense.
All of these contradict each other. Like, buddleia is not even a host plant for anything native.
Yeah.
It's nectar producing, and most of the annuals are nectar producing.
Yeah.
Which, can they feed? But is that are you focusing on? Like, there is a focus on Lepidoptera.
Yeah.
And what are the best hosts for Lepidoptera? These, not these. And
regarding
they're not regarding
and that was one of the things that was an interesting comment that the ranter Carol Reese had put in, that plants that are closely related from other countries can be nutritionally similar to others, which is, I don't know, but I could buy that. But then now you're, in that sense, you're doing the same thing. Okay, I want to get, I want to have monarch caterpillars. I need something that feeds them. Yeah. Is it easier to go out and get milkweed or go and find the African milkweed? Yeah. Or maybe there's a material, not material, there's a visual difference that is more appealing to some gardeners versus others. I can get that, but does that necessarily make it better, easier, cheaper?
There are people that say you should plant nothing but natives. The problem is that there's not enough natives.
Yeah.
Like, the problem is more people are planting non-natives and invasives, or they're more readily available than natives. Yeah. And we say all the time it'd be better if everyone had 4 natives in their yard than one person having 100. The thing that they're not talking about is diversity.
Yeah.
And in order to have the diversity of all these native bees, moths, butterflies, that we're just starting to learn what their function is in nature for the food web.
Yeah.
The more you lessen these things, because you're kowtowing to just, you're not looking at larval host, you're just looking for nectar, or you're looking at non-native pollinators. It's just,
it's
very hurting the overall diversity of what you
And that
need.
was some of the comments on Armitage's article. It was just a little short-sighted, and there was a lot of really good comments on this article.
I actually wrote short-sighted as you were reading this.
Yeah. Many that were like, oh yeah, I'm tired of people getting mad at me because I don't plant all natives, which is something I think we need to listen to that as a native plant community, that we shouldn't be getting, we've preached that for a long time. We shouldn't be getting mad at people because they aren't planting native plants, because that's just going to make them not like native plants. which is the sentiment that we're hearing from this article and a lot of the comments. There's one comment in particular that I really liked. It was by someone named Virginia, and they wrote, "I would really like to hear more about the related species idea for host plants. I read on the subject of native plant gardening constantly, but this is the first I've ever heard of this. It sounds exciting. If there were more information on this, and if they're really of equal value as hosts, I know people who'd be on board. Yes, people can be too harsh on non-natives, but if you do invasive management on larger properties like I do, you would understand the passion. Most suburban gardeners have not experienced an entire forest of burning bush. Pollen sources are useless for native insects and birds in the end without host plants. So I'm looking forward to learning more. Also, native shrubs and trees are even more important in terms of biomass. They do the lion's share of the work." That sentiment is what I really hit on, where I feel it's really short-sighted.
Yeah.
And why native plants in the home garden is so important. Because you look at these wild places, they're not very diverse. I talk about our farm all the time. You go in the back, it was farmed up to the creek at one point. They let some grow back in. It's all silver maple and red maple and sweet gum. Yeah. And there's some beech in there. There's some hickory in there. But if you went back and had a more diverse forest, you're going to have way more species diversity. Now, okay, we go down a level. There's no shrub layer. There's some viburnum nudum. There's some American hollies that are like in that middle range. Some spice bush. That's really all I can think of right now. Then you go down another level. It's multiflora rose, Himalayan blackberry. There's some good stuff. There's poison ivy. There's a Virginia creeper. You have barberry in there. I would think from that level, there's probably more or just as many invasive species by count as there are native species. Still, just Japanese stiltgrass. Then you get down the bottom, like the floor level. We talk so much about how many great spring ephemerals there were. Yeah. There's some ferns. I'm trying to remember. I think it's hay-scented fern. But you think about that whole and it's 5-6 acres. Not really that diverse. Not every ecosystem is that diverse. But a lot of the lack of diversity comes in. You had fast-growing pioneer trees. But a lot of that species lack of diversity is you don't have a shrub layer and you have a bunch of invasives instead. Yeah. And that's where I feel like I was saying, that's where I feel it's short-sighted because it's not, we're taking for granted that these wild places are doing their job and providing the ecosystem services. They're providing not just food for pollinators, but habitat for wildlife, all the other things that these plants can do, and they're not, so we need to do it at home.
You're experiencing trophic cascade. It's like, and this is something that Dr. Enrique Sala talked about in The Nature in Nature, just when you start reducing diversity, how it affects the community as a whole, and it becomes out of balance and it doesn't work properly. Yeah. And all right. I know this is harsh, but I was really shocked at how quickly Alan Armitage was willing to publish his ignorance. As far as by downplaying the need for native plants is like downplaying climate change and saying it's not a real thing. It's not as big of a deal as people think. And I think there's a lot of science to back this. And I know that's a little harsh, but to me, he sounded like an old white man who is a leader in our industry that now what he's built his career on is being questioned, not directly, indirectly. And he had to get himself back on top, and it's affecting his reputation and his wallet because you're looking at someone that with the how many cultivars has he been involved with or introductions. So yeah, it's his take is biased based on because it affects him personally to think otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about that to go that far, but it's just it's when you're just if you want bee visitors, I have zinnias in my backyard. Yeah, there's tons of bees on them. Yeah. They tend to be bumblebees. They tend to be generalist insects. There's butterflies too. It's a lot of tiger swallowtails. Yeah. A lot of generalist stuff. And like I said, I could hit the original article. It just was like, man. you're leaving.
You're missing a good.
You're missing a lot, and I think the general horticulture industry is on board with it. Hey,
yeah.
We've talked about it before too. There's a whole new line of native plants that are going to go to garden centers from this one nursery, and but it just plays on a honeybee moniker, and it's like, well, someone who knows native plants and is passionate about them and thinking about, oh, that doesn't really go hand in hand. You have a non-native insect that you're using to market a native plant, a non-native insect that doesn't need any help, even though we need to save the pollinators. This one doesn't particularly need any help,
and
it's it's just.
And this is someone that has a loud voice, giving opinion, not fact, giving his opinion to debunk what a lot of people are passionate about. And we always talk about it like whoever has the loudest voice can change the most minds sometimes. And this is kind of off topic but on topic, but I talked about it recently last weekend. There was a representative from EcoShield walking around our development going house to house. Kind of unethically, like the man walked in my backyard without knocking on the door. Just came in the backyard because he could hear I was working in the backyard, which startled me. And yeah, I've seen him just walking around people's property, kind of like uninvited. But he proceeded to approach me about bug treatment on the property, and I was like, "You're really talking to the wrong person here." And he goes, "Oh no, like this isn't toxic. This is organic."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, that's not a factual statement." I'm like, "Is that what they're telling you to say? Because if it's killing bugs, it's toxic." Yeah. And he gave me a handout of the bugs that it would kill. I'm like, "But you realize it's going to kill any bug."
Yeah.
And I'm like, we have a forest ecosystem in our backyard, and even though we have mosquitoes we don't want, we have plenty of bats that feed on this. We have plenty of birds that feed on these. And if you kill these, you're killing those things. And he just looked at me and went, "I think I'm going to leave." And then I proceeded to talk to all of my neighbors that were talking to him and just saying, "You can do what you want to do. I'm not telling you not to do it, but this is the reality of it." And we had good conversations about what can you do with mosquitoes. I'm like, "You can spray your lawn all you want, but we back up to a water source where the mosquitoes breed. So you're just throwing your money away. You're going to kill them, and then 3 days later you're going to have more mosquitoes. The problem is you're also killing all the things that are also eating mosquitoes. Like you're killing all their predators. So every time you treat your yard, you're making the matter worse."
Yeah.
Which was an eye-opener for, because that's not what, and I'm not making any money off of this, but I'm going against a company that's actively marketing house to house, telling people lies. And I kind of feel like this is someone that's using their stature to voice something that's an opinion and not necessarily factual, and turning people into getting on board. And it was just, I was really sad to see it. And it just, to me, it just knocked him down a couple notches of how I felt about him personally.
Yeah, that was kind of how I felt too. It was just, like I said, really respected in the nursery industry, has done probably a lot for vouching for native plants. And while I didn't always agree with everything that he said, I was like, it's doing more good than, I don't think it was doing any harm. This one, I get what he's saying. It's not. It's what he's saying isn't untrue.
It wasn't.
You're gonna have. Yeah.
It wasn't all bad information.
Yeah. It wasn't untrue. You're gonna have tons of bees and butterflies coming to your zinnias and your buddleia and all that kind of stuff. It's gonna happen, but it's not. Benjamin Vogt, the line I always like to quote: "Is it really a pollinator garden if you aren't supporting the larval stage?" One, and then, but it just goes so much deeper than that. Yeah. It's the food connections. It's the wildlife connections. It's the ecosystem services that these things can do that we're taking for granted that they're happening someplace else. And they are, but more and more as we continue to build and create impervious surfaces and expand, they're not anymore.
But most of these people aren't worried about ecosystem systems that are happening in the forest. They're worried about their own garden and what they like to look at.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's a collection.
Yeah.
To them, and it's we're hurting their collection.
And I think that's where, like, the native plant movement is going. Especially, I'm really impressed with the younger generations. Like, Generation Z is after, like millennials, Generation Z, because it's not even. It's gardening has always been a what can this do for me type of thing.
Yeah.
Not even what can this do for my eyes? And,
and
more so, what does I don't even go a step further and say, what does this do for my neighbor's eyes and what they think about me?
Yeah. What does
is
this
really
do
what
for
it
my
was.
property value and what other people, how they view me?
The native plant people, and I'm generalizing, not all of them. And then you go the next step and say some of these, when I look at my peers and folks that are younger than me, they're not thinking about, hey, I want my neighbors to look at this and think, wow, what a great looking landscape. They're saying, what does this do for everything else? Though not even what does it do for me. A lot of them do because they're like, oh, what can I do to eat this? But what else is going to eat this too? And they're thinking, well, yeah, what else does this help? Because it's great. The whole thing is greater than us, and it's becoming more and more important. And that's where I don't think, even in the article I featured, I don't think what they're saying is untrue. I just think it's very shallow.
Yeah, and it's, any person that disagrees with me could come to my house and look at my yard and say, oh, you're a hypocrite. Like, I see non-natives, I see invasives. Yes. But if you would have looked 5 years ago, much different. There were, other than the mature trees, there were no natives. And now we've added 20 different natives to the property. And we've taken out patches of invasives and non-natives as we've gone along. It's just so much work and so much time and so much money. We can't do it all at once.
Yeah.
Everyone's in different stages of that journey. If I had the money, I would do it overnight.
Yeah.
So it's one thing. You could easily skew what I'm saying by saying, well, look at you. You have, I can name 5 different invasives in your property.
Yeah.
I agree that. But they're also in my neighbor's properties and the natural area behind me. And unless you're going to take care of all of it, I can't control it all.
It's, my wife and I, we really don't fight often. The one thing we fight about is our landscape. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, like, if it was up for me, I don't really care. I've never been someone who cares what other people think about me. And it reflects in my landscaping, because from a conventional standpoint, my front landscape really isn't attractive in that conventional manner. I love it because it's basically looks like a big meadow.
Yeah.
And if I could turn my whole lawn into a meadow without really people getting angry, I probably would. And not even from a maintenance perspective, that's like a benefit, a bonus of it. I enjoy mowing the lawn because it kind of gives me like a space to think. But just I would miss that aspect of it if I turned my whole lawn into a meadow. But it's the only reason I don't do it is because I already get some comments here and there. Yeah. Not that I care, but it's just like, oh, people are going to angrily come at me.
You want to be a good neighbor.
And people, the things that I are seeing, people would go and mow it because they think they're helping me.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this lazy bum doesn't want to mow his lawn, and look at what they did. But and that's just education that I have to do in my own community. But that's where my wife looks and says, hey, it's got to look like the Joneses. Yeah. I don't care if we use native plants. It's just got to look like everyone else. And I'm like, I look at the folks across the street, keep going down, down, down. I don't see a single landscape that I want.
Yeah.
I'm like, it looks so bad. And that's just my preference. And I get it's not everyone's preference. But I think if more people knew what a big issue it was and how making the choice to put a Japanese maple in your yard versus a red maple, and the difference it could make. And the red maple is probably not even a red bud.
Yeah.
I think they would then start to choose the red bud.
Yeah.
If they knew how much of a effect this would have cascading down. And if everyone then chose, and you have a red bud and then a service berry, and then you just kept going down the line with what a difference that could make in a really small space.
Even if you go beyond the look, like we had this year nesting robins, nesting cardinals, nesting red-tailed hawks on our property. Like, and when you can go and see, like, and identify, use Cornell Labs and see that you have 20 different birds locally in your backyard or in close proximity, that's pretty exciting to go out. Like the other day I was on my patio and I watched 2 hummingbirds playing in my backyard. Like wonderful to see. You know, and I don't know, had we not made those changes a couple years ago, if there were would be as diverse, or we would see those things.
Yeah, and not that like and this is again anecdotal. I could write an article and use this. I go in my backyard and I go on the Cornell bird app again, and I hit record, and I probably get like 10 to 15 different species,
which is awesome.
I do it I've done this at my brother-in-law's house. I got 3, same time of day. Yeah, and maybe the weather's a little different. Maybe it's a slightly different time. I actually did those like back-to-back nights, and it's like, oh, he lives in a subdivision where he did take out his Japanese barberry.
Okay, good.
He didn't know. He just didn't like it. But they planted a bunch of roses Sharon, and they have some roses, and I don't give him a hard time about it. Yeah. But it's
he'll start seeing the Rose of Sharon popping up in the lawn.
It's one of those things. Actually, he sees a lot of Achilles popping up in his lawn.
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. That's cool. They're like, it's coming up everywhere. I need to mow.
But it's
it's a different taste. The other big takeaway I have from this, and this was one of the comments they had, and this, in the comments she took from Armitage's article, and then the comments on her article directly, is there's a lot of people who feel attacked by native plant people that they aren't planting 100% native. And some of that is because a hit dog's going to holler.
Yeah.
And when we critique, even if it's a nice critique, what we're doing now, and trying to be not progressive, but we're trying to be constructive about it. Some people, because it's directly going after what they do and what they like, get upset by that. And they're going to take that as personal criticism, even though it's a generalist comment. But then there are people, a significant amount of people who I see take it too far. And I've had people take it too far with me and say, I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to start.
Yeah.
And there's some people who haven't gotten started yet. And because they don't know they have to start.
Patience and kindness.
Yeah.
You can't beat someone into doing something that, even though be beneficial, man, you just can't do it that way. And that's something you and I have done multiple talks about having those conversations with people. We've even done a whole episode about that.
Yeah.
But, some of this is like, I wouldn't begrudge anyone for having a lavender farm or, and I'm sure the butterflies and pollinators love it. But what are the pollinators and who's using it as a larval source? I'm not saying to rip it out and be done with it. I'm not saying I'm okay if you're 99% non-native, as long as you're contributing and thinking about it and adding some natives. It's just start the journey and then let the rest take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
2 great articles. I have a feeling you're going to win this one. We just talked about it for about 20 minutes.
Well, it depends if people listen and then vote, or they just see my article and then vote.
You have to read both articles.
Oh, yeah.
Read both articles if you haven't listened to them, and before
and recognize that my article is pointing out an alternative opinion and critiquing it.
Now, I know that my critique probably wasn't very kind.
And
I have no apologies for that on this one, because there's plenty of. I know my view, and I know that I'm not one of those people that shame other people too. I just think that the initial reason for writing this article was wrong. I'm not saying everything he said was wrong. I'm just saying that I feel that his reasoning for doing this was selfish. I could be wrong, and I could be wrong. That's my opinion. Yeah. That could be my opinion, but that's how I feel about it. Yeah. So anyway, two great articles. Mine on which plants are more flammable than others, and Tom's from Garden Rant, A Familiar Voice Speaks Out, on natives and pollinators. We will have this posted on Monday, where you can read both articles, or you obviously just listen to them here. And make sure you vote, because... And of course, the choice is yours.
Stay tuned for more of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Welcome back to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
All right, that was a much longer session.
It was, yeah.
Section.
Well, we had a lot to say, and I think it was I think
maybe it wasn't all constructive.
It's a critique, but I think it was constructive.
I hope so.
I hope it helps put together the pieces for some people.
Yeah.
And they recognize that you do have, and it's one of the most frustrating things when I go to some of these meetings, because there's so much branding that's coming into native plants in a sense, which I like.
I'm okay
I like
with
that there's more native plants coming out there, but it's just the messaging isn't quite there. Yeah, like I was saying, people listen, pollinators are in decline, and it just ends up being the sole focus of this is pollinators. And
how many people,
and then a lot of people just tie it into honeybees.
Yes.
And we're in the minority of the population who understands that it's not honeybees that are hurting. It's our native bees and our native birds. And that reminds me, there's someone else I got to reach out to about coming on that I heard on another podcast. I'm like, that would be, I don't know why I didn't think about reaching out to them sooner.
Awesome.
Mostly because I didn't know who to reach out to.
Awesome.
But I have a contact now.
So I did, before we get into listener shout outs, like we have some great guests coming up that are already confirmed and scheduled, but we did hear back from, I have to follow up, of one of our most requested guests that has agreed to do the show, but just hasn't scheduled as of yet. And the person's very busy. But should I say the name or should I wait? Like, am I jinxing it?
I'm not sure who you're talking about. Fran's going to write it on a piece of paper for me so I can tease it, I guess.
Let's see here.
Let's see.
Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I do.
It's this one.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Do you wanna jinx it?
I don't think I'm jinxing if I said there's plenty of times people have agreed to do it and it just never worked out. But Ranger Griff from Redwood Rising said he would love to come on the podcast and talk to us. And it's just a matter of scheduling at this point, and was very complimentary about us as well. So we just expressed how we're fans and that our listeners are huge fans that keep requesting. So I'm hoping that might happen. So I know it's even been talked about in the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook
group.
So.
Yeah. Put a good word in for us.
Yes.
And then say, hey, you need to do it sooner versus later. we want to hear from you.
All right, let's do some listener shout-outs.
Listener shout out.
All right, you want to go first? I've been going first a lot.
I can go first and say we didn't get a single write up on a 5-star review this week.
We
Not
didn't.
a one, and that made me very sad.
I think a lot of it. I was very upset this week that Apple Podcasts had issues on the day that we publish our episodes on Friday. So even though we publish it at 5:00 in the morning, it didn't show up in some people's podcast app until like 3:00 in the afternoon, 4:00 in the afternoon. So which is, it's a shame because it was a 3-day holiday weekend. And some people probably didn't even look at that until Tuesday. But no new 5-star reviews, not even one without a write up.
Yeah, not a one.
Yeah.
But so I did pick someone, not out of a hat. I saw some Facebook activity, and I thought I'd shout this person out, and that's Patrick Gilliam, who's been a long-time listener to the podcast, New Jersey resident, student of Bill Young. And basically, I really appreciate some of the stuff he had been talking about on Facebook about supporting local nurseries, and I thought that was just a really nice thing to do, and saying, hey, just wherever you are, it's like there's some big ones out there. This was actually a survey I saw done.
Oh, okay.
More around seed, but it was basically saying how so many people are getting their seed from one or two places, and there's not many, but there's other seed players out there, and there was a lot of complaints that people didn't know where to get seed, and it was just connecting those dots.
Yeah.
But I think it happens a lot, and I've talked about it before. If no matter where you are in the country, well, I don't know how far I can go with this. There's probably someone who's into native plants where you are.
Yeah.
And you're going to meet them through Native Plant Society meetings or Wild One meetings or meetings about birds or bees or butterflies, that kind of stuff. And they're going to maybe have some extra that they're willing to share. maybe they want a little money in return or a case of beer or something like that. But if you don't have the luxury of having a solid native plant nursery near you, I think that's good. The other thing that was really interesting with his post is, and I'd also want to say, is there's a lot of sharing between nurseries.
Yes.
I know just with our nursery that there's a lot of other native nurseries around us. Not all. There's some that really stick to them and do everything themselves. There's a lot of nurseries around us that will like fill in with certain stuff. Yeah. So we'll grow it, and they know where they're getting it from. It fits what their clientele needs. They want to keep it local, and going to us because we're within an hour isn't that big of a deal to them. So yeah, there's a lot of nurseries that stuff goes back and forth, and so. I just thought that was
awesome.
It really, he was, there's a couple different posts he had on Facebook. That was one I thought was really nice. And you saw a lot of really good comments of people saying,
cool.
Hey, I'm in Virginia. He threw out a couple that were local to him. There's someone's like, I'm from Virginia and this is one I really like. So I'm from Massachusetts. This is one I really like, or here's two that I go to a lot. And I thought it was just really,
that's awesome.
Good commentary.
That's
there.
Awesome.
So.
Hey, while I'm thinking about speaking of jinxing it, with guests, we should reach back out to the gentleman from Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, that's been a while.
But that's someone that also agreed to come on. We just haven't been able to schedule. That's a perfect example.
The amount of folks that have agreed to come on and then just through my doing or
mine
theirs,
just
it hasn't happened yet. We probably have a list longer than how many guests we have.
Probably. So my shout out is to Janet Siasia. After there was some joking around going on in the Facebook group after I shared my secret with poison ivy in the last buzz. And I wanted to thank Janet for sharing her poison ivy tip, which how she deals with it is she uses a hair dryer to kind of dry it out. And it takes some of she said the histamines kind of like go away. It takes care of the itching. You get some relief. But she has found great success with using a hair dryer on poison ivy, which I will next time. Hopefully it never happens again, but the next time I get poison ivy, I'm going to try that. And
say that one more time. I missed it there.
She uses a hair dryer on poison ivy, and she said it makes the histamines kind of like quickly go.
Yeah,
she's like, so it kind of like you get like instant relief with the heat, and it kind of dries it out.
Okay,
and it makes it less itchy.
Interesting.
Which I'd never heard that before.
I'm gonna have to tell my wife.
Yeah,
she has a ton of it right now.
All right, have her try it and see what. Yeah. And Janet, I've known since high school. We actually.
Janet listens to the podcast.
Janet listens to the podcast. We went to high school together, and we actually went to not together, but we hung out at Lollapalooza '92. How's that?
Interesting.
So,
cool.
Yeah, so I appreciate the tip.
Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate the tip. So we don't really have a question this week, but we do have a submission in the question and comment line.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So I've listened to this. You haven't. We're not going to play the whole thing because it's a 10-minute clip. But I want to thank Joe Stormer for submitting this one. And this is, I guess he did a little camping trip near Queer Creek in Okanagan County, Washington, and said that this is what he was listening to while surrounded by Engelmann spruce, whitebark pine, and an understory of red huckleberry, just to name a few. He listed what his surroundings were. But I just thought it would be interesting to play what he recorded that night, just a snippet, just to set the mood. Do you have to go to the bathroom yet?
No, but I did feel my eyes start to close. That was very peaceful.
If that were on Nature Sounds, that would push them back in front of us again on the nature charts, because they were in front of us for quite some time when we first started. So now they're in our rearview mirror, thankfully. But thank you for sharing that. And it makes it, the thing I appreciate about that is remembering to enjoy nature and to have those connections and get away from the lights, get away from the sound, and experience. I would love a camping trip where that was my soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
for the night.
Yeah.
So we have a good 10 minutes of that.
Don't play it in the office, or we're gonna have the ring of the phone will jark people away.
Yeah, what? All right, so we don't have a lot of the other things that we typically do segments, but take it or leave it. I don't know if you looked at it.
Oh, I did.
I just, since this has been a topic for the last couple buzzes, and it is a native plant, and it is a very beneficial native plant, but poison ivy, are you taking it or leaving it? Would you ever just plant it on your property?
Oh, would I plant it?
Would you plant it?
I wouldn't plant it.
Have you ever seen it called for on a restoration site?
No, but I've heard of it, I think, through you.
Yeah.
But
I've seen it once or twice in 16 years.
yeah, no, I wouldn't plant it, but I think it is valuable.
It will probably volunteer itself in.
Yeah.
I mean, we always talked about in the native plant trivia, that was one of the top 10 most liked plants, native plants by deer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's it is a really highly preferred plant by deer, which is amazing for how much there is.
Yeah.
It has, I guess, it has benefits for birds too. I would assume there's insects that like it.
I would imagine.
But
are you planting it? That's my.
no, I'm definitely not.
I'm not planting it either.
I have so much that comes up in my garden. And this is why my wife has poison ivy. She gets poison ivy really bad. I don't.
Are you ripping it out?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're ripping it out of our garden because it's all over the hedgerow.
It's actually climbing our wooden fence and actually knocking it over.
Wow.
And like it's heavy enough on that that we've had to take some down. We haven't removed it all, but we've probably removed 75% of it. Mm-hmm. One, because I'm deathly allergic to it. Like, and it's not good for me. Even just with when it falls and the leaves fall. Yeah. Like, it's just a big issue for me. Mm-hmm. So I have to just be careful. But yeah, I'm leafing it. I know it's a native. I'd never say let's do away with it. Mm-hmm. But just curious if it showed up on your property if you're leaving it. What if you had a wooded lot and it showed up in like the back quarter? Because my old neighbor like had a half an acre of woods, and it completely enveloped the whole half an acre.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get like we have a ton of it at the woods at the back of our farm. Yeah, I'm not worried about it there. Okay. I just don't want it in like my flower bed gardens. Yeah. Just because it climbs over everything, it takes away from my aesthetic. Look at that, we came full circle. There's benefits to it, but it's all a balance, and that's one place where I think the downside of it in our home gardens is my wife can't go in there. She learned her lesson once. She just learned her lesson again this past weekend. Yeah. And so, and I get it a little bit, but not bad. And so from a planting it perspective, I'm leafing it. From as a whole,
an ecology,
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I'm taking it as far as an overall whole for ecology.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But planting it or having it in a social area of my yard, leaving it.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. I think that's about it.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap us up for today. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants, Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Since we're giving thanks, thank you to RJ Comer for our Buzz intro theme music. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music wherever you consume your music, and check out his Americana playlist on Pandora. Big thank you to Dave Bennett for our Native Plant Anthem. Follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Native Plants _Healthy Planet or at Pinelands Nursery, and also YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget about the question and comment line. Call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. So that was Walter Payton, Mario Lemieux. What were the numbers? Remember, it was Walter Payton, Mario. Yeah, Walter Payton, Mario Lemieux, Peyton Manning. No, Peyton Manning's not number one. It was Cam Newton's a number one. I forget who he said. Peyton Manning. 18. Yeah, Peyton Manning for 18. Who was number 9? Was it Eli Manning? No, he was number 10. I don't remember Nick who Foles. Nick Foles. All right.
There you go. 346-6189.
Not the most popular way to remember a number.
No.
I'm finding out.
No, but I got pretty close there.
Yeah. Well, it's good for folks like you and me who watch a lot of sports and know some sports history. We got to figure out how you can remember a number for folks that don't watch sports.
Oh, all right.
I think the Venn diagram and this is one of the issues that I think we have. The Venn diagram of native plant people and sports people is probably barely touches.
Yes.
And I think for native plants to break through into more, I think probably the overlap of gardeners and sports people probably might touch a little bit more, but not a lot more. Nursery people and sports probably overlaps quite a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
But
you
I
go to many
like
trade shows and people are wearing, like in the winter, like when it's football season, everyone's wearing their favorite teams.
But I think that's one of the hurdles we have to overcome is you have a group that's really, really passionate about, that's their thing that they're passionate about. And you have the folks who are passionate about football, hockey, basketball, whatever, that we need to have a little bit of passion for native plants too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That would make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
If you call and leave a question or comment, we'll do our best to play it on a future episode of The Buzz. And let's not forget about the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group. A lot of fantastic conversations, fun conversations, interesting conversations. We appreciate everyone's kindness and how welcoming everyone is to new members.
Yeah, so you can buy... Have you ever tried to do this, like the real fast-talking people at the end of commercials?
No.
We should try and do that one time.
All right. See how quickly we can get through the...
Yeah. I might try it right now.
All right, go for it.
You can buy shirts and listen to NativePlantsHealthyPlanet.com. I can't do it. I already screwed up.
I started laughing immediately.
You can buy Native Plants Healthy Planet merch at our website, www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. Just click on the banner at the top that takes you to our Teespring store. Lots of good designs up there, and then your dollars are going to support organizations that are doing really great stuff with native plants. We don't keep any of it. It's not our organization. We pick other organizations.
We just heard from one of our customers who's also a competitor in another part of the Northeast that as a father and son, and the son was given a sweatshirt from his father for Christmas because he had found one that had a native plant on it, was talking about native plants. And the son was looking, he's like, did you realize that you just got me a Pinelands Nursery podcast? Sweatshirt? And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, this is from their podcast. It's Native Plants Healthy Planet. So it's just, he just liked the design and the name of it without realizing what it was. I just thought that was a great gift.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, we donated the money, so.
Yeah, yep. So, and just keep listening where you're listening. You're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever
Stitcher.
Not Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Yeah. There's probably a bunch of different
Stitcher is now gone.
Things that people can listen on. Even Alexa, you can play us on there. Do us a favor, subscribe if you haven't already, and then leave us a 5-star review. There's something riding on it now.
Yeah.
If you do a little write-up with that 5-star review, you could win a signed copy of Soil
by Camille Dungy.
So with that, I'm done.
I don't have a secret this week.
We probably could have saved the pizza for a secret. I would say my secret would be that I've had the big 3 of New Haven pizzas. But I haven't had the original Frank Pepe's.
We just drove right by it, too.
We were right there.
We should have went and got one pizza from all 3 and just sat in the back of the truck.
Time.
No, I know.
I know you probably had the time. I had the time. Glenn probably had the time.
Yeah. I know.
I felt bad. I know Leo. I told him we'd be home around like 6:30, and then we didn't get home until 7:30. Yeah. So, and then he had probably 20, 30 minutes home.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to. I thought about it, but I'm like, we shouldn't stop again.
And next time.
But we'll have to go back up.
Compare all 3.
Yeah, when you look at like the top pizza lists, the ones I can check off is growing greater. Yours
is way more diverse than mine. And it's weird, like when you look at the lists, I don't even agree with some of the ones that I've been to that are on the list. But, I've had Giordano's in Chicago. I've had, Modern Pizza.
That's what I haven't had is the Chicago ones.
Will we get a chance next month?
Maybe.
All right.
If we want to have it at 8 in the morning.
That's okay. You can only eat one slice. It's so thick. All right. Yeah. Okay. That will be the secret, that you've had the top 3. So it was Sally's, Frank Pepe's.
Frank Pepe's, and then Modern.
All right.
And I guess there's people who throw the bar pizza in there. Yeah. but it looks different.
I've had 2 of the 3 because you shared Sally's with me last
yeah.
time you were up there. I haven't had Frank Pepe's yet.
Yeah.
All right. That's
All
good.
right. So with that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone. Coming up next week, we have Camille Dungy, and we talk about her new book, Soil. We'll see you again next time, and until then, keep it native.
In meadows, woods, wetlands, and dales goes a bounty of beauty that never fails. Our native plants, so diverse and so rare, treasures of our land beyond compare. From the ferns below, soaring oaks above, each plant has a place, each plant is love. Monarch caterpillars launch milk, wheat so tall, bees buzz about, sipping nectar fall. Oh, native plants, how you grace this land. In your diversity, we will take a stand. To protect and preserve our generations to come, their beauty and potency second to none. To protect and preserve the earth, to restore the native plant movement you just can't ignore.
Goldenrod, asters, and flowers galore. Bernard is so stunning, can't help but adore. Their colors, their fragrance, a feast for the eyes. Their value to wildlife, no need to disguise.
Native plants, how you grace this land. In your diversity, we will take a stand.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.